The USS Defiance moved slowly through the dark space of the Kepler sector. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge watching the stars on the main screen. His crew was busy checking mineral readings from nearby planets. This was supposed to be a simple mission. They were just looking for resources and mapping new areas. Nothing exciting ever happened on survey missions. Jake was reading reports when his first officer, Lieutenant Claire Bennett, walked up to him with a tablet. She showed him some interesting rock formations they had found on a small moon. The readings looked good. Earth needed these minerals for construction projects back home. Then everything changed in a single moment. The bridge lights flashed red. Loud alarms started ringing through the whole ship. Every screen showed warning messages. Jake jumped from his chair and looked at the main display. His heart started beating fast. 3 large ships appeared right in front of them. They came out of nowhere, just materializing from empty space. The ships were dark red, almost like blood. They had sharp edges and strange designs that looked mean and dangerous. Weapon ports covered their hulls like angry eyes staring at the Defiance. Lieutenant Ryan Shaw checked his tactical station quickly. His face went pale. He looked up at Jake with worried eyes. "Captain, those are Vorkan warships. They just dropped out of subspace right on top of us." Jake knew about the Vorkans. Everyone in the fleet knew about them. They were raiders who attacked disabled ships. They took the vessels apart for scrap and sold the crews as slaves to other alien races. The Vorkans were known throughout the galaxy as brutal and cruel. They never showed mercy. "All hands to battle stations. Raise shields and charge weapons," Jake ordered. His voice was calm but firm. Claire moved to her station and started working the controls. But before anyone could do anything, the Vorkan ships fired. A strange blue wave of energy hit the Defiance. It washed over the hull like water. Jake felt a weird tingling feeling all over his body. Then the lights went out. The main engine stopped humming. The familiar sounds of the ship just died. Emergency red lights came on, but they were dim. The bridge looked like something from a nightmare now. Dark shadows filled every corner. "Report," Jake demanded. Ryan checked his station, but most of his screens were black. Only a few backup displays still worked. "Sir, all main systems are offline. Weapons are dead. Shields are down. We have no power to anything except emergency systems." Down in engineering, Chief Engineer Peter Hayes was already moving. His team ran around checking every system they could reach. Sparks flew from broken panels. Smoke filled some corridors. The damage was bad. Peter opened a communication line to the bridge. The comm system was barely working, full of static and noise. "Captain, they hit us with some kind of suppression field. It shut down our main power grid completely. Everything that runs on our primary systems is fried. We're running on backup batteries only, and those won't last long." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. This was exactly what the Vorkans did. They had perfected this attack over many years. They would scan a ship, learn how it worked, then hit it with a field that shut down everything. It was efficient and brutal. On the main screen, which was running on emergency power, Jake could see the 3 Vorkan ships. They moved into position around the Defiance. One in front, one on each side. They formed a perfect triangle. They were not firing anymore. They were just waiting. Lieutenant Commander Helen Price, the science officer, studied her readings with shaking hands. "Captain, they're maintaining exact positions. I think all 3 ships are projecting the suppression field together. It's a network that keeps us locked down." Jake understood. As long as those 3 ships stayed in formation, the Defiance would stay dead in space. They were trapped. A message came through on the emergency channel. The voice was rough and harsh, speaking broken English with a thick accent. "Human ship, you are now property of Vorkan salvage fleet. You will prepare for boarding. Any resistance will result in immediate death of all crew. You have no weapons. You have no power. You have no hope. Surrender now." The bridge crew looked at Jake. 215 people on this ship, all of them depending on him to make the right choice. Some of the younger officers looked scared. Even the experienced ones seemed worried. Claire stood next to Jake's chair. She kept her voice low so only he could hear. "Sir, we have no weapons. No engines. No shields. If they board us, we can't fight them off. Maybe we should consider their offer." Jake looked at her. Then he looked around at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes, yes, but he also saw something else. He saw determination. He saw anger. These were humans. They did not give up easy. No, Jake said simply. We don't surrender. Not to them. Not to anyone, Ryan looked confused. Captain, with respect, what can we do? We're completely helpless here. Jake smiled. It was a strange smile. One that made some of his officers feel better and others feel nervous. Are we? We're only helpless if we accept their rules. They disabled our conventional systems. But this ship has more than just conventional systems. Peter's voice came through the comm again. Captain, I'm looking at the quantum drive. The core is still intact. The suppression field is designed for normal ship systems, but the quantum drive operates on different principles. It exists partially in subspace. Jake's smile grew wider. Can you use it? There was a long pause. Jake could almost hear Peter thinking through the comm line. Sir, the quantum drive is meant for moving the ship through space. It's not designed to power other systems, and it's definitely not designed as a weapon. What you're suggesting is completely against every safety protocol we have. Chief Hayes, in about 15 minutes, the Vorkans are going to send boarding parties. They'll cut through our hull. They'll kill anyone who resists and chain up everyone else. Then they'll sell my crew to the highest bidder. So I'm asking you again, can you use the quantum drive? Another pause. Then Peter's voice came back stronger this time. Give me 12 minutes, Captain. I'll give you something these Vorkans will never forget. You have 10 minutes, Jake replied. After that, they start cutting into my ship. The comm went silent. Jake sat back in his chair and watched the Vorkan ships on the screen. They sat there, confident and calm. They had done this hundreds of times before. They thought they knew exactly how this would end, but they had never faced humans before. Not really. They had scanned the Defiance and saw a normal exploration ship. They saw standard weapons and regular engines. They saw something weak that they could easily defeat. What they did not see was the most dangerous thing about humans. They did not see the ability to adapt. They did not see the refusal to quit. They did not see the creativity that came out when humans were pushed into a corner. The Vorkans thought they had won. They thought this was already over. They were about to learn a very hard lesson. When you back a human into a corner, when you take away all their options, when you think you have them beaten, that is when humans become most dangerous. Jake watched the timer count down. 10 minutes until boarding. 10 minutes until his engineer either saved them all or failed trying. He looked at his crew working at their stations, preparing for whatever came next. The Vorkans had made their first mistake when they attacked the Defiance. They were about to make their second mistake by underestimating what humans could do with 10 minutes and the will to survive. Peter Hayes ran through the dark corridors of engineering. His boots made loud sounds on the metal floor. Behind him, his team followed close. They reached the main engineering bay and spread out to different stations. The emergency lights made everything look red and scary, but there was no time to be afraid. Lisa Morgan pulled out her handheld tablet. It was one of the few devices still working. She brought up what little information she could access. The main computer was dead, but some backup systems still had power. She showed the screen to Peter. The suppression field is hitting everything connected to our main power grid, she said. It's like a blanket covering all our normal systems. Nothing can work while it's active. Greg Palmer stood at a backup terminal that ran on battery power. He pulled up the ship's blueprint, the basic design that showed how everything connected. He studied it carefully, looking for something, anything they could use. We have maybe 15 minutes before they start boarding, Peter said to his team. He kept his voice steady even though his heart was racing. The suppression field is blocking what they expect to find. They scanned us before they attacked. They saw a standard Earth ship with normal systems. So they used a field designed to shut down those exact systems. Lisa's eyes got wide as she understood, but we're not completely standard. The quantum drive is new technology. It's experimental. When they scanned us, they probably didn't even recognize what it was. Exactly right. Peter nodded. The quantum drive works in subspace. It exists partially outside normal space. That means the suppression field might not affect it the same way it affects everything else. Greg looked up from his terminal. His face showed doubt. Are you saying we should use the quantum drive to power the ship? Peter, that's crazy. The quantum core puts out massive amounts of energy. It's built to push us through space faster than light. It's not meant to run life support and weapons. The power levels are completely different. Not weapons, Peter said. We don't need weapons. Not the conventional kind anyway. But what if we use the quantum drive itself as a weapon? Danny Wright, a young technician who had been listening, spoke up. Sir, I don't understand. How do we turn an engine into a weapon? Peter started moving around the engineering bay, pointing at different systems. The quantum drive creates a field that lets us slip into subspace. It bends the rules of normal physics. Now those Vorkan ships out there are maintaining a precise formation. They have to stay in exactly the right positions to project their suppression field. What happens if we disrupt the space around them? Lisa caught on quickly. We create a quantum field of our own. We push it outward from our ship. It would interfere with their positioning. Maybe even mess up their own systems. That's the idea, Peter confirmed. But we need to do it fast, and we need to do it without blowing up our own ship in the process. Up on the bridge, Jake listened to his engineer's plan through the emergency comm system. Helen Price had been running calculations on her science station. She looked worried. Captain, what they're suggesting has never been tested. We have no idea what will happen if we channel that much quantum energy through systems not designed for it. Jake looked at the timer. 13 minutes left. Do we have any other options? Nobody answered. They all knew the truth. There were no other options. Then we try it, Jake decided. Peter, you have my authorization. Do whatever you need to do. Down in engineering, Peter gathered his core team around a workstation. Okay, here's what we need to do. We have to reroute power from the quantum core to the deflector array. The deflector is designed to push things away from the ship. If we feed it quantum energy instead of regular power, it should project a subspace field. Should? Greg repeated. That's not very reassuring. It's the best I can offer right now, Peter admitted. Lisa, start pulling power couplings from every non-essential system. Life support, gravity generators in empty sections, recreational areas, anywhere we don't absolutely need power. We're going to need every connection we can get. Lisa nodded and ran off with 2 other technicians. They started tearing out components from all over the ship. They didn't have time to be neat or follow proper procedures. They just ripped out what they needed and ran it back to engineering. Greg began the dangerous work of connecting the quantum core to systems it was never meant to touch. He had to bypass safety protocols that were there for very good reasons. These protocols prevented exactly the kind of thing they were trying to do. But safety protocols did not matter much when the alternative was slavery or death. I'm disabling the automatic shutdown systems, Greg announced. If something goes wrong, the core won't cut off automatically. We'll have to do it manually. Understood, Peter said. Keep going. Danny Wright crawled into the access tubes, small spaces between the walls where power lines ran. He had to manually connect cables that were never meant to be connected. It was hot and cramped and dangerous. Sparks flew when he made some of the connections, but he kept working. On the bridge, Ryan Shaw and Kevin Brooks worked on their own part of the plan. They were trying to take control of the deflector array manually. Since the main computer was down, they had to use backup systems that were slow and difficult. I'm linking the deflector to manual controls, Kevin said. It's responding, but barely. We'll have to aim it by hand if this works. When this works, Ryan corrected him. We don't have room for if anymore. Throughout the ship, every crew member who could help was helping. Scientists from the research labs ran calculations. Medical staff prepared for possible injuries. Even people whose jobs had nothing to do with engineering were carrying equipment and helping however they could. This was what humans did best. When faced with impossible situations, they worked together. They found solutions where there should be no solutions. They refused to accept defeat. Peter watched his team work with pride. They were moving fast, adapting to each problem as it came up. When one approach did not work, they tried another. When they ran into a dead end, they found a different path. This was human innovation at its finest. 8 minutes, Captain, Claire announced from the bridge. Jake walked between the bridge stations. He put his hand on shoulders, offered quiet words of encouragement. His crew was scared, he could see that. But they were also determined. They believed in each other and in their ability to survive. Peter's voice came through the comm again. Captain, we're almost ready. I've connected the quantum core to the deflector array through a network of jury-rigged power lines. It's not pretty and it definitely won't pass any safety inspections, but it should work. I think. You think? Jake asked. Sir, I'm making this up as I go. We're in completely unknown territory here. Nobody has ever tried to use a quantum drive like this before. The math says it should work, but math and reality don't always agree. Will it hurt the Vorkans? If it works the way I hope, it'll make their ships go crazy. Their systems will fail just like ours did, maybe worse, since their technology isn't designed to handle quantum interference. Jake looked at the main screen. The Vorkan ships sat there, waiting patiently. Small boarding craft were being prepared on their launch bays. He could see them through the view screen, dark shapes moving around inside the enemy ships. 5 minutes until boarding, Claire said quietly. All hands, this is the captain, Jake announced over the ship-wide comm. In a few minutes, we're going to try something that's never been done before. It might work, it might not. But I'd rather go down fighting with a crazy plan than surrender without trying. Brace for impact. Engineering, you are clear to execute when ready. Peter stood in front of the quantum core. It was a massive piece of machinery, glowing with blue light even now. Lisa, Greg, and Danny stood at their positions, hands on controls ready to activate everything they had built. This is either going to save us or kill us, Greg muttered. Then let's make sure it's the first one, Peter replied. On my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark. He pushed the activation button and the quantum core roared to life. The quantum core came alive with a sound like thunder. Energy flowed through the makeshift connections that Peter's team had created. The power cables glowed bright blue as massive amounts of quantum energy rushed through them. The whole engineering section started shaking. Power levels are climbing, Lisa called out, watching her displays. The numbers kept going up and up. We're at 50% capacity. 60%. 70%. Peter kept his hand on the main control. He had to be ready to shut everything down if it started to go wrong. But so far the connections were holding. The system was working exactly as he hoped. Well, almost exactly. There were some fluctuations he did not like, but there was no time to fix them now. Deflector array is receiving power, Greg reported. The field is building. This is actually working. On the bridge, Jake watched his instruments come back to life one by one. Not the main systems, those were still shut down by the Vorkan field. But new readings appeared, showing the quantum energy building around the ship. Captain, I'm detecting a subspace distortion forming around our hull, Helen said. Her voice had excitement in it now instead of fear. It's growing stronger every second. The quantum field expanded outward from the Defiance like an invisible wave. It moved through space in ways that normal energy could not. It existed partially in subspace, partially in normal space, and it did not care about the rules that governed conventional physics. When it reached the Vorkan ships, everything changed. The lead Vorkan vessel suddenly lurched to the side. Its engines fired randomly, pushing it out of position. On their bridge, alarms must have been going crazy. Their systems were failing, just like the human systems had failed minutes before. But the Vorkans had one big problem. Their suppression field required all 3 ships to maintain exact positions. When one ship moved out of place, the whole network started to collapse. Their field is breaking down, Ryan announced with a huge smile. Sir, our main systems are coming back online. We have power. All across the Defiance, lights came back on. The main engines started humming again. Weapon systems began their startup sequences. The ship was waking up from its forced sleep, but Peter was not done yet. He had more surprises for the Vorkans. Lisa, activate modulation sequence Delta 7, he ordered. Lisa's fingers moved across her controls. The quantum field started to pulse, creating waves of energy that swept over the Vorkan ships again and again. Each wave was tuned to interfere specifically with the kind of technology the Vorkans used. The second Vorkan ship tried to retreat. Its engines fired at full power, trying to get away from the quantum field, but the interference was too strong. The engine control systems failed, and the ship started spinning out of control. Small explosions appeared on its hull as systems overloaded. The third Vorkan ship attempted to fire its weapons at the Defiance, but the targeting systems could not lock on. The quantum field was creating false readings on all their sensors. The weapons fired randomly into empty space, hitting nothing. Jake stood at his command chair watching the chaos unfold. 3 ships that had been so confident minutes ago were now helpless. They tumbled through space, unable to control their own systems, unable to attack, unable to even maintain position. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the lead Vorkan ship, Claire said. Put it through, Jake ordered. The view screen flickered and showed the Vorkan commander. He was a reptilian creature with green scales and yellow eyes. But those eyes were wide with fear now, not the confidence they had shown before. The Vorkan was breathing hard, his chest moving up and down rapidly. Human ship, cease your attack, the Vorkan commander said. His voice was no longer harsh and demanding. Now it was pleading, desperate. We surrender. Please, we surrender. Stop this weapon. You are destroying our ships. Jake let the silence stretch for a moment. He wanted the Vorkan to understand what it felt like to be helpless. To have no options. To be at someone else's mercy. Peter, reduce the quantum field to minimum effective level, Jake finally said. Keep them disabled, but don't destroy them. Aye, Captain, Peter responded. The field intensity dropped, but it stayed active. The Vorkan ships stopped taking damage, but they still could not move or fight. They were trapped just as effectively as the Defiance had been trapped. Jake looked at the Vorkan commander on the screen. You attacked us without warning. You disabled our ship. You threatened to kill or enslave my crew. And you did all of this because you thought we were helpless. You thought we had no way to fight back. The Vorkan commander did not respond. He just stared at Jake with those wide, fearful eyes. You made a mistake, Jake continued. You assumed that because you shut down our conventional systems, we were defeated. But you did not understand something important about humans. We don't need the best weapons or the most advanced technology. We just need a problem to solve and the will to solve it. On the tactical display, Ryan could see the Vorkan boarding craft retreating. They fled back to their motherships as fast as they could move. The invasion that was supposed to happen in minutes would never happen at all. Here is what is going to happen now, Jake said to the Vorkan commander. You are going to transfer all the technical data about your suppression field technology to us. Every detail, every specification, everything we need to defend against it and possibly use it ourselves. The Vorkan started to object, but Jake cut him off. You are also going to send a message to every Vorkan fleet in this sector. You are going to tell them what happened here today. You are going to explain that humanity is not prey. We are not victims. We are not easy targets. And anyone who attacks us will regret it. The Vorkan commander's head dropped. It was a gesture of submission. It will be done, human captain. The data transfer is beginning now, and the message will be sent to all Vorkan fleets. You have our word. Your word means nothing to me, Jake said coldly, but your fear does. Remember this feeling. Remember what it's like to be helpless. Maybe next time you will think twice before attacking someone you assume is weak. Jake cut the transmission. The view screen went back to showing the 3 Vorkan ships floating in space, damaged and disabled. They were no longer a threat. They were a warning to others. In engineering, Peter and his team watched their instruments carefully. The quantum field was stable now, running at just enough power to keep the Vorkans locked down but not cause any more damage. We did it, Danny said quietly. He sounded like he could not believe it. We actually did it. Of course we did, Lisa replied with a tired smile. We're human. This is what we do. Greg was already making notes on his tablet. We need to document everything we did here. The fleet is going to want to know how we pulled this off. This could change everything about how we design ships. Peter nodded. Later. Right now, let's make sure this field stays stable until help arrives. We're still running on borrowed time here. On the bridge, Jake sat back in his chair. The tension that had filled the room was finally starting to ease. His crew was smiling, laughing, hugging each other. They had faced death and won through creativity and determination. Claire stood next to him. Sir, long-range sensors are picking up a fleet approaching. It's ours. The cavalry is coming. Better late than never, Jake said with a slight smile. Though I think we managed okay without them. Helen was studying the data they were receiving from the Vorkan ships. Captain, this suppression field technology is amazing. With this, we could defend against similar attacks in the future. We could even develop our own version. And the quantum field modifications we made, Ryan added. If we can refine this, standardize it, every ship in the fleet could have this capability. Jake looked around his bridge. His crew had taken a desperate situation and turned it into a victory. They had not just survived. They had innovated. They had created something new from nothing but spare parts and determination. Log everything, Jake ordered. Every modification, every calculation, every decision we made. This is going to be studied for years to come. The Vorkan ships remained locked in the quantum field, helpless and defeated. The boarding craft that were supposed to capture the Defiance sat unused in their bays. The slaves they thought they would take were instead free and victorious. The Vorkans had thought they disabled the humans. They thought the fight was over before it began. They learned too late that disabling human technology was not the same as defeating human spirit. When humans were pushed to the edge, when all their options were taken away, that was when they became truly dangerous. because humans did not just accept defeat. They found another way. Fleet Command Headquarters sat in orbit above Earth, a massive station where the most important military decisions were made. Jake Morrison walked through its corridors with Claire Bennett, Peter Hayes, and Helen Price following close behind. Officers they passed stopped and stared. Some saluted with extra crispness. Others just watched them go by with expressions of awe. Word had spread fast. Everyone in the fleet knew about the Defiance by now. The ship that was supposed to be captured had instead captured 3 enemy warships. The crew that should have been slaves had instead taught the Vorkans a lesson they would never forget. Admiral Susan Carter waited for them in her office. She was a stern woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had fought in more battles than most officers would ever see. She had earned her rank through decades of service and smart decisions. "Sit down," she said simply when they entered. No ceremony, no wasted words. That was her style. They sat in chairs facing her desk. The Admiral had several tablets in front of her, all showing different reports and technical data. She looked at each of them in turn, studying their faces. "I have read your report 3 times," Admiral Carter began. "I have reviewed the technical data. I have examined the captured Vorkan ships. I have interviewed your crew members, and I still find it hard to believe what you accomplished." "We did what we had to do, Admiral," Jake said simply. "You did far more than that, Captain. You took an exploration vessel with no weapons and no power, and you turned it into something that defeated 3 warships designed specifically for combat. Do you understand what that means?" Peter spoke up. "It means we got lucky, ma'am. If any one of our improvised connections had failed, we would all be in Vorkan slave markets right now." "Luck had very little to do with it, Chief Hayes. Yes, things could have gone wrong, but your team made sure they did not. You calculated the risks. You planned every step. You adapted when problems came up. That is not luck. That is skill." Admiral Carter pulled up a display on the wall behind her desk. It showed the Defiance surrounded by the 3 Vorkan ships. The image came from long-range sensors on one of the rescue fleet vessels. "The Vorkan Empire has already contacted us," the Admiral continued. "They want to negotiate a treaty. A formal non-aggression pact with clear boundaries and trade agreements." "Do you know why?" "Because they're afraid of us now," Claire suggested. "Exactly. For years, the Vorkans raided whoever they wanted. They attacked ships that could not fight back effectively. They thought they had perfect tactics and perfect technology. Then you showed them they were wrong." The Admiral pulled up another display. This one showed communications intercepts from various alien species throughout the sector. Messages in dozens of languages, all talking about the same thing. The human ship that fought from beyond normal space. The crew that refused to surrender. "You have become famous whether you wanted to or not. Other species are calling the Defiance the ghost ship. They say you attacked the Vorkans from subspace itself like spirits that could not be hurt by normal weapons." Helen smiled slightly. "We did not attack from subspace, Admiral. We just used quantum mechanics in a way they did not expect. It does not matter what the technical truth is. What matters is the story, and the story is spreading across the galaxy. Humanity is not prey. We are not victims. We are something new and dangerous." Admiral Carter stood and walked to the window that looked out over Earth. The blue and white planet turned slowly below them, peaceful and beautiful. But the galaxy around it was not peaceful. It was full of predators and dangers. "I am promoting all of you," the Admiral said without turning around. "Captain Morrison, you are now a commander. The rest of you move up 1 rank as well. These promotions are effective immediately." Jake started to object, but the Admiral raised her hand to stop him. "You earned this. More importantly, the fleet needs you. We are redesigning our entire approach to ship combat based on what you did. We need experienced officers who understand how to think beyond conventional tactics." She turned back to face them. The Defiance is being completely rebuilt. New hull, new systems, new everything. She will be the first of a new class of vessels, fast, adaptable, and designed from the beginning to use quantum field technology in combat. And you 4 will oversee her construction and train her new crew. Peter looked surprised. "Admiral, we made up everything as we went. We do not have a training manual for this." "Then write one, Chief Hayes. You have 6 months while the ship is being built. Create the manual. Develop the tactics. Figure out how to make what you did repeatable and reliable. Turn your desperate improvisation into standard fleet doctrine." The magnitude of what the Admiral was asking hit them all at once. They were not just being rewarded for what they did. They were being given the responsibility to teach others, to create something new that would protect human ships for years to come. The Vorkan suppression field technology we captured is already being studied, Admiral Carter continued. Combined with your quantum field work, we will have both offensive and defensive capabilities unlike anything else in the galaxy. The people who attacked you thinking you were easy prey gave us the tools to defend ourselves against everyone. She sat back down and looked at them seriously. This is not just about one ship anymore. What you did has changed how humanity fights. Other species are watching us now. Some with respect, some with fear, some with anger because we are upsetting the established order. You started something bigger than you realize. Jake thought about that. They had just been trying to survive. They had not set out to change anything. But sometimes that was how history worked. One moment, one decision, one desperate act could change everything. When do we start? He asked. Tomorrow. Get some rest tonight. See your families if you have them, because starting tomorrow you are going to be very busy. They left the Admiral's office and walked back through the station corridors. This time they did not avoid the stairs. They accepted the salutes and the looks of admiration. They had earned them. In the weeks that followed, the story of the Defiance grew. News services ran features about the crew. Technical journals published papers analyzing what they had done. Military academies began teaching the Morrison maneuver, the tactic of using quantum drives as weapons when conventional options failed. The Vorkan Empire kept its word. They sent the promised treaty and spread the warning throughout their fleet. Do not attack human ships. Do not assume they are helpless. The humans will find a way to fight back, and their methods are unpredictable. Other species took notice too. Trade delegations from friendly aliens increased. Some wanted to learn from humanity's innovative approach. Others wanted to make sure they stayed on humanity's good side. 6 months later, the new Defiance launched from Earth orbit. She was larger than before, more powerful, more advanced. Her quantum drive was integrated into every system. She could fight conventionally or adapt to quantum warfare in seconds. Commander Jake Morrison stood on her bridge, the same crew around him. They had trained dozens of new officers in the months while the ship was being built. Those officers now served on other vessels throughout the fleet, spreading the knowledge and the tactics. All systems are ready, Commander, Claire reported from her station. She wore her new lieutenant commander insignia with pride. Quantum drive is operating perfectly, Peter said from engineering. His team had built this engine from scratch, incorporating everything they learned from their desperate improvisation. Course laid in for the outer rim, Helen announced from navigation. We have survey assignments in 3 systems. Jake settled into his command chair. It felt right being here on this ship with this crew. They had been through something together that bonded them forever. They had faced death and found a way to win. Take us out, Jake ordered. Let's see what else the universe has to teach us. The Defiance pulled away from Earth and engaged her quantum drive. She slipped into subspace smoothly, faster than light, headed for distant stars and unknown challenges. Behind her, other ships followed. New vessels built with quantum weapons, crews trained in adaptive tactics, a fleet that learned from one desperate fight that the old rules did not always apply. The galaxy had thought humanity was just another species trying to survive in a dangerous universe. The Vorkans had thought humans would be easy prey when their technology was disabled. They were all wrong. Humans did not just survive. They adapted. They innovated. They turned defeats into victories and weaknesses into strengths. They refused to accept that anything was impossible. The Defiance became a legend, but it was more than just one ship. It was a symbol of what humans could do when pushed to their limits. It was a warning to anyone who thought humanity was weak. It was proof that the most dangerous weapon was not technology at all. It was the human mind, creative and stubborn and absolutely refusing to give up. The aliens had thought they disabled the humans. Instead, they taught humanity a valuable lesson. When you take away the conventional options, humans just invent new ones. When you think you have won, that is when humans become most dangerous. And the galaxy would never forget that lesson. Years later, cadets at the academy studied the battle in detail. They learned about the crew that improvised a weapon from an engine. 3 hours passed while the Defiance kept the Vorkan ships locked down. The human fleet arrived in a show of force, 12 warships dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Their weapons were charged and ready, expecting a fight. Admiral Karen Blake commanded the rescue fleet from her flagship, the USS Challenger. When her sensors showed the situation, she had to look at the readings 3 times to believe them. The distress call had said the Defiance was disabled and under attack. But the scene in front of her showed something very different. Captain Morrison. "This is Admiral Blake. Please explain why 3 Vorkan warships are floating dead in space, while your supposedly disabled vessel appears to be fully operational." Jake could hear the confusion in the Admiral's voice. He could also hear something else, curiosity, interest, maybe even a bit of pride. "Admiral, it's a long story. The short version is that the Vorkans disabled our conventional systems with a suppression field. So we stopped using conventional systems and improvised something new." "Improvised what exactly?" "We turned our quantum drive into a weapon, ma'am. Used it to create a subspace interference field that disrupted their ships and collapsed their suppression network." There was a long silence on the comm line. Jake could imagine the Admiral looking at her tactical officers, wondering if she heard that correctly. "You turned your propulsion system into a weapon?" the Admiral finally asked. "Yes, ma'am. My chief engineer can send you the technical details." "It's quite fascinating, really." Another pause. "Captain, hold your position. I'm sending boarding teams to secure the Vorkan vessels and a technical crew to inspect your ship. And I want a full report on my desk within 6 hours." "Understood, Admiral." The human boarding teams took control of the Vorkan ships without any resistance. The Vorkan crews were too shaken and scared to fight. They surrendered immediately, handing over their weapons and gathering in their cargo bays as ordered. Lieutenant Commander Scott Palmer led the team that boarded the Vorkan command ship. He found their bridge crew sitting quietly at their stations, not moving, barely talking. The Vorkan commander looked up when Scott entered. "The human ship should have been helpless," the commander said quietly. "Our intelligence was perfect. We scanned them. We knew their capabilities. We used the exact suppression frequency needed for their technology." "How did they do this?" Scott smiled. "You scanned our technology. You did not scan our ability to adapt. Big difference." Engineers from the Challenger came aboard the Defiance to examine what Peter's team had done. Chief Engineer Rachel Stone walked through the modifications with her mouth hanging open. She looked at the connections, the bypassed safety systems, the creative routing of power lines. "This should not work," she kept saying. "According to every rule of engineering, this should have blown up your ship. The power levels are completely wrong. The quantum core is not designed for this. None of this makes any sense," Peter shrugged. "We did not have time to worry about what should not work. We only had time to make something that would work." Rachel looked at him with respect. "You realize what you've done here, right? This is going to change everything. If we can refine this, make it reliable, every ship in the fleet will want this capability." "That was not really our goal at the time," Peter admitted. "We just wanted to avoid becoming Vorkan slaves." "Well, you succeeded at that, and you might have revolutionized naval warfare in the process." Back on the Challenger, Admiral Blake reviewed the data streaming in from both the Defiance and the captured Vorkan ships. Her tactical team was already running simulations, trying to understand exactly what happened and how it could be replicated. "Admiral, the Vorkan suppression field technology is more advanced than anything we have," her science officer reported. "If we can adapt it for our own use, we could defend against similar attacks, maybe even use it offensively." "And the quantum field weapon?" Blake asked. "Preliminary analysis suggests it could work on a larger scale. If we designed ships specifically for this instead of jury-rigging existing systems, the effect would be much more powerful. We could create dedicated quantum warfare vessels." Blake leaned back in her chair, thinking through the implications. One small exploration ship had just changed the balance of power in this sector. The Vorkans had been raiding human ships for months, always using the same tactics, always successful, until today. "Send a message to Fleet Command," Blake ordered. "Tell them we have captured 3 Vorkan warships intact and acquired significant new technology. Also inform them that Captain Morrison and his crew have developed a new weapon system that needs immediate evaluation." On the Defiance, Jake walked through his ship, checking on his crew. They were tired but happy. The fear that had filled the corridors hours ago was gone, replaced with pride and relief. In the medical bay, Dr. Amy Foster was treating minor injuries. A few crew members had burns from electrical shorts. Some had cuts and bruises from working in damaged areas, but nobody was seriously hurt. They had survived without a single casualty. "How are they doing, Doctor?" Jake asked. They're fine, Captain. More shaken up than anything. Though I have to say, I never expected to be part of history when I signed up for a survey mission. None of us did. Jake agreed. In the recreation room, some of the crew had gathered to decompress. They told and retold the story of what happened, each person adding their part. The tale grew a bit bigger with each telling, but that was okay. They had earned the right to celebrate. Danny Wright sat with a group of junior officers explaining how he crawled through the access tubes to connect the power lines. I could hear the Vorkans on the comm, counting down until they would board us. And I'm in this tiny space trying to connect cables that were never meant to touch each other, and sparks are flying everywhere. Were you scared? A young woman asked. Terrified, Danny admitted. But I was more scared of what would happen if I did not finish the job. So I kept working. That was the story all over the ship. People who were scared but did their jobs anyway. People who worked together to solve an impossible problem. People who refused to give up even when giving up seemed like the only logical choice. 2 days later, the Defiance limped into Earth orbit, escorted by the rescue fleet. The ship had damage that would take weeks to repair. The quantum drive modifications needed to be completely rebuilt. Half the power systems were fried and needed replacement, but the ship was home. The crew was safe. And they had done something nobody thought possible. News of their victory spread fast. By the time they docked at the orbital station, reporters were already waiting. Everyone wanted to know about the ship that defeated 3 Vorkan warships while disabled. Everyone wanted to hear about the crew that turned a propulsion system into a weapon. Jake stood on the bridge one last time before his crew disembarked. He looked at the stations where his people had worked so hard, the places where they had fought and won. Captain, we're cleared to disembark, Claire said. The station has quarters ready for the crew while the ship is being repaired. Good. Make sure everyone gets some real rest. They've earned it. Sir, there's one more thing. Fleet Command wants to see you, me, Peter, and Helen immediately. The Admiral said it's urgent, Jake nodded. He expected this. What they had done was too important to wait. The military would want every detail, every calculation, every decision. They would want to know if it could be done again, if it could be taught, if it could change how humanity fought its wars. As he walked off his ship, Jake looked back at the Defiance. She looked rough, with scorch marks on her hull and temporary patches covering damaged sections. But she was still flying, still fighting. The Vorkans thought they had disabled her. They thought one suppression field would be enough to defeat a human ship. They learned too late that humans did not fight the way other species fought. Humans did not accept the rules of engagement that others followed. When you took away a human's weapons, they made new ones. When you disabled their systems, they found other systems to use. When you thought you had won, that was when humans became most dangerous. The Defiance had proven that. One ship, one crew, one impossible situation. And humanity had won not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the simple refusal to accept defeat. The galaxy was watching now. Other species had seen what happened. They had seen how humans responded to being attacked. The message was clear and simple. Underestimate humans at your own risk.